I'm back and ready to help you dominate the 2025 season. First video of the year. 10 players that I am drafting in every single draft I'm in this year. Starting off with a running back, no doubt about it. This guy has league-winning upside. Mr. Chase Brown, who escaped the draft, still the #1 running back in Cincinnati. He was already a top 7 running back in fantasy last year when he became the starter. I mean, Zach Moss went down with that injury in week 8. If you look from week 9 onwards, guys, when it was just Chase Brown's backfield, he was one of the most dominant running backs in the entire league from a utilization perspective. He had a better utilization rate than Saquon Barkley, Bijan Robinson, Devon Achane. They were using this guy and abusing this guy, and that is exactly what we want for fantasy football. You can see my RB8. You can see on FastDraft the RB13, on Sleeper the RB11. I think he's a great value in tourneys right now. But if you look from week 9 onwards, here's where Chase Brown ranked amongst NFL running backs. He was 7th in carries, 2nd in targets, 4th in total touches per game, so that is carries and targets, and he was 3rd in fantasy points per game with 20.6. He was a RB5 in that span, and you've got websites ranking him as a RB15 plus. It's crazy. It's absolutely bonkers. In that span, Chase Brown averaged more points per game than Jahmyr Gibbs, Josh Jacobs, Devon Achane, Derrick Henry, Joe Mixon, Alvin Kamara. And by the way, in PPR leagues, he's going to be an absolute cheat code again. From week 9 onwards, he averaged 5.5 targets per game. A full season pace, he was on pace for 94 targets. Alvin Kamara finished 1st in targets last year amongst running backs with 89. I mean, this guy was on pace for the entire season as a starter to be the highest targeted running back in the NFL. That's because he's on a dominant offense that does not get off the field, right? We know the Cincinnati Bengals offense and defensive situation right now with Trey Hendrickson holding out. It might get even worse, but they were 7th in offensive points per game last year. They scored a ton of points, but you can see at the bottom of this, they were 25th in points allowed. So they had to keep scoring points so they could get in games. They're also 8th in total offensive plays per game. So the opportunities are always there. The Bengals offense is so fantasy friendly. And there's no one on this depth chart that is competing with him for the RB1. Zach Moss still recovering from a serious neck injury. Samaje Perine couldn't beat out Kareem Hunt or Carson Steele for opportunities in Kansas City last year. I mean, guys, Samaje last year was tied with Xavier Worthy for 5th in total rushing attempts on the Kansas City Chiefs, and he accounted for just 4.4% of the Chiefs' total carries on a team that lost their RB1 in Isaiah Pacheco that year. Ridiculous. Chase Brown is about to go nuclear in 2025, and you better draft this kid, all right? First wide receiver we're going to talk about today. How about Mr. Jerry Jeudy? Man, he had such a great breakout season in 2024, and he is on pace to continue that. My wide receiver 28, you see on FastDraft, he's a great value at wide receiver 35, on Sleeper, wide receiver 33. I genuinely don't think Jerry Jeudy could have had a better outcome for fantasy football this offseason. Firstly, no one joined this team to threaten his targets. Guys, they're going to have to start Jamari Thrash. A lot of you guys watching this might not even know who that is. They're going to start Cedric Tillman. All right, we like Cedric Tillman. He had some nice flashes, but Jerry Jeudy is the clear #1 target earner here. At one point in the offseason, it looked like this team was going to add Travis Hunter, and that was pretty scary, but obviously they didn't do that. Jacksonville traded up with them instead. I mean, Jerry could have a similar role in 2025 as he had in 2024. He had a high utilization rate in 2024 from week 9 onwards than Justin Jefferson, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Terry McLaurin. Of course, he's not as good as these players as a talent, but we're all about utilization in fantasy football. How many opportunities will my guys get? Well, Jerry Jeudy was used more than these superstars were used last year from week 9 onwards, and he dominated in that role from week 9 onwards. He was 4th in targets per game, 5th in receptions, 3rd in receiving yards, and he was 7th in fantasy points per game with 19.2 points per game, and he was a wide receiver 6 in that span, and they added quarterbacks that can support him. Deshaun Watson was an absolute train wreck last year, but Jerry Jeudy was far better without him. It was the Jameis Winston effect, right? If you look at games with Deshaun Watson, that is the end split here on the left side, and without Deshaun Watson, that's on the right side. That's when we had Jameis Winston. You could see a massive difference in Jerry Jeudy's fantasy upside from 8 points per game to almost 19, from about 6 targets per game to 10.3, from 38 receiving yards to about 96. But here's the, I know, Jameis Winston's gone, but guess who will be the quarterback 1 heading into the 2025 season? It will be Joe freaking Flacco. Think about this. Joe Flacco walked so the Jameis Winstons could run, and the overall team improved in Cleveland as well. I mean, They were so one-dimensional in 2024. It was pass, 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 which was great for targets, but there wasn't as much efficiency because you never had to stop the run game. Well, they drafted Judkins in the early second round and Dylan Sampson. This offense is going to be more balanced. There'll be more drives and more scoring opportunities. Jerry Jeudy, one of the best picks you can make at wide receiver this year. All right, how about another running back, Bucky Irving? I don't think most people realize how dominantly Bucky Irving stole this job from Rachaad White at the end of the year last year. You know, Bucky didn't take over this role until about week 12 after their bye week. From weeks 1 to 11, you can see Bucky Irving, you know, was not the favored running back in this backfield. But from weeks 12 onwards, he absolutely dominated, had a utilization rate of 7.2 compared to 5.3 for Rachaad White. And then if you actually look at the games that mattered the most for the Bucs last year, we're talking about the games in the playoffs. And to get to the playoffs, you'll see, shout out to Matthew Betts. This is the splits in those must-win games. Rachaad White had 1 carry compared to Bucky Irving's 36. Rachaad White had 2 targets compared to Bucky's 7. I mean, if you look at their touches per game in must-win games last year, 21.5 for Bucky, 1.5 for Rachaad White. Rachaad White is a nothing burger. Stop worrying about him. It was just utter dominance from Bucky Irving last year, and his season was historically great. People are missing this. Here's a list, guys. You ready for this? Here's a list of running backs in the last 2.5 decades who in their rookie season had 240 PPR points. That's about 14.5 points per game, okay? 47 plus receptions and average 5.2 yards per carry. Here's a list of those guys. You ready for it? Big list. Alvin Kamara, pretty good, right? Jahmyr Gibbs, and then Bucky Irving. That's it. I mean, this guy was historically great. And by the way, if you add another qualifier to that list, 1,000 rushing yards, Bucky Irving would have stood alone. Shout out to English class. But even if you remove the rookie tag and we just look at how good he was amongst running backs in the NFL last year, let's look at the entire NFL. He was 4th in yards per carry, 7th in PFF run grade, number 1 in yards after contact per attempt, 9th in missed tackles forced. Breakaway percentage, he was top 5. In yards per route run, he was top 5. And that's minimum 100 rushing attempts when we look at those numbers. And by the way, fun fact, Tampa Bay had the biggest single season increase in team rushing yards in the Super Bowl era. In 2023, they had 1,500 rushing yards at 3.4 yards per carry. In 2024, that went to almost 2,600 rushing yards at 5.2 yards per carry. Bucky Irving was the reason why, and this man turned into a fantasy monster down the stretch. From week 12 onwards, on just 51% of the snaps, he averaged 18.3 points per game. And in one of those games, week 14 versus Vegas, he only played 16% of the snaps. So if you remove that game, he's actually almost averaging 21 points per game. Only Gibbs, Bijan, and Saquon average more points per game in that span. I do not think it's unrealistic to say Bucky Irving has a top 5 ceiling in 2025. If you missed out on Devon Achane last year because you were worried about the late round guy in year 2, don't miss on Bucky Irving. All right. First quarterback we'll talk about on the channel this year. How about Mr. Brother Bo Nix? Bo Nix is easily the most underappreciated fantasy rookie from the 2024 class. The first 4 weeks, yes, he struggled. But from week 5 onwards, he dominated. I mean, let's look at those first 4 weeks. He's a rookie trying to get acclimated to the NFL. You know, the PFF grade isn't great. Completion percentage is down, right? The touchdown to interception ratio is terrible. He was only averaging 12 points per game in fantasy. But from week 5 onwards, the PFF grade skyrockets. The completion percentage and adjusted completion percentage skyrockets. The touchdown to interception ratio through the roof. He was a quarterback 5 from week 5 onwards and averaged 21.5 points per game. Guys, sit down for a second, because you got to know Bo Nix from week 5 onwards averaged more points per game than Jaden Daniels, Patrick Mahomes, Jared Goff, Justin Herbert, and Kyler Murray. He completely outshined his situation. He was on a team that, number 1, was 20th in rushing yards per carry. This was not an efficient rushing offense. The team's leading rusher, Javonte Williams, with 513 rushing yards, that ranked 42nd amongst all players in rushing yards in the NFL last year. He had no help as a receiver outside of Cortland Sutton, and he succeeded in one of the most difficult divisions in the entire NFL. And by the way, was the first quarterback to lead the Broncos to the postseason since 2015. Oh, and by the way, he still found a way to have a historically good season as a rookie for fantasy football. Here's a list of quarterbacks in the last 2.5 decades who in their rookie season had 350 PPR points, 3,200 passing yards, and 400 rushing yards. You ready for this? This is very impressive. All right, Cam Newton. My God, what a monster he was for fantasy football. Jaden Daniels. He's pretty damn good, isn't he? Robert Griffin III and Bo Nix. It's only those 4 names. That is it. And there is more help incoming for his sophomore season. Evan Ingram, a tight end known for yak. RJ Harvey, a very good pass catcher out of the backfield. Pat Bryant, a middle round wide receiver that's going to help elevate all these other names to kind of play at a higher level to get opportunities. Bo Nix was the quarterback 5 from week 5 onwards, yet somehow he's around consensus quarterback 12. That's ridiculous. What are we even talking about? Easily the best late round quarterback to target in your fantasy football drafts this year. Draft with me every night this offseason on the FastDraft app, where there are over $250,000 in prizes waiting to be won. Getting started is easy. Download the FastDraft app, use the promo code LAND at signup to get your deposit match up to $50. That is 10 free drafts on us. And when you finish your first real money contest, I'll send you my 2025 rookie report and season rankings completely free. Check out the link in the pinned comment to start drafting today. We talked about a young player. Let's talk about a veteran. I wholeheartedly believe that Davante Adams is one of the most underrated wide receivers in fantasy football this year. My wide receiver 14, you'll see sleeper and fast draft around wide receiver in 22 and 23. You can exploit and get Davante Adams so cheap right now in these tournaments. Davante has always dominated target share. I mean, he has finished top 4 in targets per game every year since 2018. We're talking 7 years in a row of just pure, utter dominance. He's averaged over 10 targets per game every single season. Is he the same player that he was in 2020? No, he's not. Will he still demand a very high target share? Absolutely yes, 100%. And he's walking into an environment that will feed him targets. Guys, the Rams are 3rd in vacated target percentage with 39.6% of their targets up for grabs. And they are 1st in total targets to wide receivers vacated. 205 targets available in this offense from wide receivers. I mean, how many years have we seen multiple wide receivers be successful for fantasy football with Sean McVay's offense? I mean, most recently, you see Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp in the past 2 years, both top 24 points per game guys. Don't forget the years of the Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods, Brandon Cooks era. I mean, the Rams are a great passing attack. They have been top 10 in passing yards per game in each of the last 2 years. See 9th in 2024, 7th in 2023. And I believe this is an upgraded version of what they had in Cooper Kupp last couple of years. I mean, Davante Adams was a better player than Cooper Kupp these past 2 years alone. And this is the best situation, in my opinion, that Davante Adams has been in his entire career since he left Green Bay. This is by far the best situation he's been in, point blank, period. All right, another wide receiver. Let's talk about JSN. Jackson is about to feast on opportunities this year. This team just shipped away DK Metcalf in his prime and added an aging veteran in Cooper Kupp who just can't stay healthy. I mean, the Seahawks are 7th in vacated target percentage, and they are 2nd in total wide receiver targets vacated with 179. I mean, JSN showed this franchise he can be their number 1 alpha last year. If you look at the money stretch, and we define money stretch by rounds like week 9 to 10 onwards, that's where a lot of the trends carry over from one year to the next. But from week 9 onwards, he was 18th in targets per game, 9th in receptions, 9th in receiving yards, 8th in fantasy points per game at 18.2, and he was a wide receiver 7 in fantasy football from week 9 onwards. One of the easiest picks you can make in PPR leagues, point blank, period. All right, are you looking for a sleeper? Well, a running back sleeper I will be drafting everywhere. And in my dynasty leagues, I've been trading for him everywhere. Mr. Jordan Mason. He was absolutely fantastic as a starter with those starter opportunities in 2024. He got injured in week 8. So let's look at weeks 1 to 7. In that span, we're looking at 40 running backs who had 50 rushing attempts. That's what we're looking at here. He was 7th in yards per attempt at 5.2. 2nd in rushing yards with 95.3 per game. He was 12th in yards after contact per attempt. He forced the 2nd most missed tackles. He had the 10th highest breakaway percentage and had the 2nd most runs of 15 or more yards. And by the way, next gen stats, they noted that from weeks 1 to 8, he led the league in missed tackles force percentage at 37.3%, a higher missed tackle force rate than my beloved Bucky Irving, than Bijan Robinson, than Ken Walker, and he means more to the Minnesota Vikings than just a backup running back tag. Come on, lads. Let's read through the leaves together. I mean, they went out of their way to trade for him, even though they had a stacked running back class in 2025 in the NFL draft. That speaks to their intention. They traded for him. Then they went out and paid him. They gave him $12 million total, $7 million fully guaranteed, right, over the course of 2 years. That is one of the better contracts for a number 2 in the NFL. I mean, if you actually look for reference, he's making the same annually as like a Najee Harris this year. The only RB2 in the NFL that's making more money annually is Devin Singletary. He's getting paid a decent amount of money at the position. And Aaron Jones just has a vast injury history. I mean, injury shark, gives him an 87.6% chance of injury in 2025. They project him to miss at least 3 games. And even if Aaron Jones stays healthy, Kevin O'Connell is already talking about how this backfield is a 1A, 1B situation in interviews. Take a listen to what he has to say.
Aaron Jones is at his best when we can keep him fresh. We can keep him truly as that 1A because we've got the 1B with him. And that was Jordan Mason. And for Quace to go out and make that trade, to go get a guy that really has so much upside, has demonstrated even against us last year what he can be capable of doing.
The reality is Mason just fits this scheme perfectly to a T, and with Aaron Jones being 31, getting up there in age, I would not be surprised if Jordan Mason is a league winner. All right, this next player. This is probably one of the most confusing ADPs at the wide receiver position for me in 2025. That is Stephon Diggs. I know he's not the hot new shiny toy anymore that people love in fantasy football, but we're talking wide receiver 46 on Sleeper, wide receiver 45 on FastDraft. What are we talking about? Go exploit this in drafts right now. I have him as my wide receiver 31. I mean, guys, how many clear-cut wide receiver ones can you get in tournaments right now beyond consensus wide receiver 40? There's genuinely zero doubt in my mind he will lead this team in targets. I mean, last year, the team's leading receiver wasn't even a receiver. It was Hunter Henry with 674 receiving yards. Their top 3 receivers in receiving yards were Demario Douglas, Kayshon Boutte, and Kendrick Bourne. And here's where those wide receivers ranked amongst the entirety of the NFL in receiving yards. Demario Douglas was 49th. Boutte was 56th, and Bourne was 99th. I mean, Stephon Diggs is the clear-cut #1 wide receiver on this depth chart. It's not even close. And don't forget how effective he was in 2024 for fantasy football before his injury, keeping in mind that he was on the Houston Texans that had 3 wide receivers who were fantasy relevant. So from weeks 1 to 8, he was 14th in targets per game, 6th in receptions. He was 5th in reception percentage, very efficient out of the slot. And he had the 8th most fantasy points in that stretch, 15.2 PPR points per game. I understand the concerns about his injury, but he is already priced at a very affordable rate. And for what it's worth, he is way ahead of schedule with this injury rehab. He looks extremely comfortable. He is cutting with confidence in these drills. And this video was from early April. He should be available week 1. All right, how about Trey Benson? Let's get the elephant in the room out of the way. Yes, James Conner is very good. He just got a contract extension. However, this coaching staff has talked about how they view James Conner and Trey Benson as a duo in 2025. Have a listen in.
I really see us, if he takes a necessary jump from year 1 to year 2, I think we've got 2 starting backs. You know, that's how I kind of view those guys. And you see certain teams out there that have like 2 1s, I would say. I think we should have 2 1s next year.
And for some weird reason, there's this theme in the community right now that Trey Benson was bad last year. That's not even remotely close to the truth. He was disappointing for fantasy, yes, but that's because of a lack of opportunities. I mean, from week 3 onwards, out of 70 running backs with at least 40 rushing attempts in that span, he was 5th in yards per attempt, 6th in yards after contact per attempt, 7th in elusive rating, and 24th in yards per route run. In that span, he averaged more points per touch than J.K. Dobbins, Najee Harris, Brian Robinson, Swift, Stevenson, Pollard, McCaffrey, and Jonathan Taylor. So yes, he was disappointing last year for fantasy football, but he was a very good player for this team, and he could be a sleeping giant in 2025. All right, last thing we'll do today is talk about a tight end. I know we don't like tight ends. Let's talk about Brenton Strange, who I do like as a late round flyer this year. Look, we all hate drafting tight ends in fantasy football. They always let us down every year. So I am drafting constantly in these Flex 4 tourneys. And in the Flex 4 tourneys on FastDraft app, you don't actually have to draft a tight end. You draft 6 players. There's no positional limitations. The top 4 get entered into your lineup each and every week. There's a $50,000 prize pool, and it's a smaller tournament, so you have a great chance to win. Here's look at a team that I just drafted recently. Look at this monster I built without any tight ends. Brian Thomas in the first round, Genty, then Bucky, and Chase Brown in round 4. Chase Brown in the 4th round is ridiculous. The earlier you draft in these tournaments, the better you get to exploit their ADP. If you want to draft with me, I'm drafting a lot pretty much every night right now. You can download the FastDraft app, use the promo code LAND. We will match your deposit up to $50. And when you finish your first contest, I will give you my rankings completely free for the 2025 season. And by the way, that is about 10 free drafts on us when you get your deposit matched. But look at some of these rankings that you can exploit. These are my rankings versus FastDraft ADP. I mean, some of these are insane. Like, for example, Chase Brown, RB8 versus 13. We're looking at Devontae Adams, wide receiver 14 versus 23. Diggs, 31 versus 45. I mean, some of these are insane. You can exploit them. But for the leagues where we do have to draft tight ends, I like Strange as one of your last picks in fantasy drafts this year. He showed flashes last year, right? He had 4 weeks in particular where he scored over 10 PPR points per game, including a 12 target game in week 15. But you can see he was a fringe starter without Evan Ingram in the last couple of seasons on the right side. That is out of split with Evan Ingram. Those are the games without Evan Ingram, almost 9 points per game. He's a better athlete than most people realize, over a 9 RAS score, and we know that athleticism is very important for the tight end position. According to RAS, over 77% of Pro Bowl starters in the past 25 years tested with an 8+ score. He has great draft capital, second round pick by the Jags in 2023, and there's a bigger pie of this offense available. Yes, they brought in Travis Hunter. He's definitely going to be one of the more targeted players in this offense, but both Evan Ingram and Christian Kirk are gone. There is room for more targets for a tight end like Brenton Strange, right? Evans in Denver, Kirk is in Houston. You can see Evan Ingram was second on the team in targets, only played 9 games. He was on pace for 128 targets though. Kirk, 6th on the team in targets, only played 8 games, was on target for 100 targets this last year. And we saw big games for K. Dotton and Liam Cohen's offense last year, A top 12 season could be on the horizon for one Brenton Strange. I appreciate y'all watching the video. Do me a favor, like the video to show some love, subscribe if you like the content, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Nothing but love. Adios. If you're thinking about supporting us in this economy, that's big love, and you deserve love in return. So for every yearly Mother Flocker member who uses the promo code LAND, we're giving out a free team playbook, our 2025 rookie report, access to all premium tools, free site vouchers, and of course, a huge thank you from the LAND crew. You're far too kind. That's love.